All right, what's up, guys? It's Shonen back here again with Dom, and the game has Sparking Zero has been out for about a month now, or maybe we're on our third and a half week, but whatever. So the game's been out for a bit. People got to try out the game, try out the online, and Dom has a list here of things he wants to go over. He's 3-4 time tournament champion so far. I got that right?
Yeah.
And so Dom has a lot of experience in this game. He's also made up some cool stuff like Dom Sweep and a bunch of other cool tech stuff that he learned as he played online. And yeah, I'm gonna let him take it away and go ahead, speak your piece.
All right, so like Shonen just introduced, I have like a list of gameplay adjustments that I would make if I was the developer of the game. Obviously, going into this, I know just to preface that they don't have any intention of making the game competitive, but my earnest opinion is that this would not only benefit the quote-unquote competitive side of the scene, but also the casuals. I don't think any casuals enjoy a lot of the mechanics that are going on online. I also think that the ranked mode is being played by casuals just as something to do. Like queuing up for player matches isn't really it's really not optimal in this game because the way it works is kind of you just join a lobby and there's X amount of players in there. It's really just sort of something to do with your friends if you want to do private matches. But if you want to just queue up against randoms and play like 1v1 or DP battle, then you're going to queue up for ranked. And the casuals that are playing the game, they're not going to be wanting to deal with a lot of the stuff that's going on right now in the online gameplay. So also, I guess another thing to know with that is that I do think the developers would benefit, or I suppose the publishers would benefit from kind of at least quote unquote slightly investing into the competitive scene. I don't know whether or not the competitive side composes a large majority of the player base. I highly doubt it. It's probably a very small percentage, but I don't really see any downside into this from a developer point of view, just financially and from a software development perspective. It's not really difficult to make a lot of these changes. I think value changes are probably the easiest thing to do, and what they've done so far, at least in their previous patch with the Yajirobe changes, and that's kind of the angle that I took for the adjustments that I would make. So this might be cope and kind of pointless to do, but I still found it interesting to make, and you guys can provide your opinions and perspectives on the various input changes that I would like to propose to the developers, right? So
If you're tired of region locked games or missing out on exclusive anime only available in Japan, then you need SurfShark VPN. With SurfShark, you can unlock streaming platforms and access content from around the world. Plus, it's perfect for gamers. Ever wanted to try an Asia-only game like Jump Assemble but couldn't download it? Surfshark can make it happen. For those of you who don't know, Jump Assemble features a variety of characters from One Piece, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Bleach, Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, Undead Unlock, and Mashle. It's an online MOBA similar to League of Legends, but you're playing with Shonen Jump characters. I totally recommend giving it a try if you use Surfshark VPN especially, because you can get around the region lock and download it and start playing today. And it's not just about access. Say goodbye to ISP throttling, slowing down your game, and protect yourself from DDoS attacks and trackers. Whether you're chasing early game releases or watching exclusive anime, Surfshark's got you covered. The best part? You get your first 3 months free using my link in the description. And if it's not for you, no worries. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's zero risk in trying it out. Level up your online experience today with Surfshark.
to begin, I kind of just started off with like the most basic things. So 90 seconds of character selection or presets. So when you queue up for ranked, I think you have like 30 seconds to pick a character, Shonen?
Yeah, 30. Yep.
You have 30 seconds to pick between 180x, like 186 characters or something. I don't remember the exact number, but that's just absurd. You basically have to memorize character positions, and you have to go into the game knowing what you're going to pick. And if you're going to pick a 5-man team in DP battle, good luck doing that, unless you already have that team pre-picked before you queue in for ranked, right? And the same is true for player matches. So if you're in a tournament or any type of competitive event and you want to change your characters after a loss, you're going to have to know where all the characters are. And I feel like 30 seconds is extremely short. I think 60 seconds is good. I wrote 90 seconds here. It's a bit extra. I don't know if 1 minute and 30 seconds is good. I can just change that to 60 seconds. It doesn't really matter. It just needs to be increased in some way, because not being able to pick your characters efficiently is just a huge detriment. Alternatively, you can have presets. So like in Naruto Storm, you can preset teams, and you just go into online and you have these preset teams available and you can just instantly pick them, right? And that'll circumvent a lot of the character selection nonsense that goes on. What do you think, Shonen?
Yeah, that's more or less right. Like even just glancing like through the list, like I agree with like I agree with a lot of this. I think well I don't want to jump ahead. Like I guess I'll see like how when we get to like the Vanish Wars stuff, we'll see where your head's at.
Yeah, so yeah, like I don't think they're gonna be privy to changing the actual character selection screen to make it easier to navigate through, but at least adding extra time or presets would make it a lot more efficient for anyone that wants to play. I think that's a big complaint that I've seen as well.
T3 had it so that like you clicked on one Goku and you basically saw all the forms, right? Like
Yeah, that made the character selection screen a lot more fluid too, which is nice.
I think this was just done on purpose to show how many characters are there.
Yep.
But they could have definitely went that route. I'm sure it was thought about.
Yeah. Next, I have skippable intros. I actually talked to Sean about this before, though. I mean, do you want to talk about that, like, and why it is the way it is?
So I believe so. When you're doing when you're skipping the intros offline, I think the game already like loads faster and stuff. Like I might be misspeaking, but I know when I do certain intros, like offline, the game doesn't let me press the start button, and I suspect it's because like the stuff in the background is like loading. So like if you're playing online, like the reason why it's not letting you skip the intros and just start fighting is because it's still loading all the background stuff. So
yeah, I think another. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Go ahead. I was done.
Okay, I was gonna say I think another reason why it might be the case is it kind of makes it more predictable when the game is gonna start. So like the way this game starts is kind of bizarre. You kind of just are thrown into the fight, but with the intros, it kind of gives you some leeway to prepare to actually fight, which is nice. But I think at least if both players like choose the start button, and you can see like 1 out of 2 on the bottom right. I think JJK Curse Clash had this, and then both players skip, then it just starts, which would be fine. I think people would be able to adapt to that.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, next we have some. After this, it's all gameplay stuff, so I can share my my in-game screen to show exactly what I'm thinking when I write these. So first, I have perception, locked movement once activated. So the way this would work is it's sort of a prevention system to make it so that people can't spam perception, as in just rapidly press the button and constantly realign with the opponent as they're moving around them. So instead of making it so that you can just spam the button and it realigns you, it should lock you into the perception stance once you press it, right? That way you can't just let go of the button and then press it again to go into a new counter stance.
Yeah.
It should put you into the counter stance, and then to exit the counter stance, you have to do a different input other than perception. So let me go in game. Shares my screen in game too. Give me 1 second. All right, you should be able to see my game now.
Yeah, I see it.
So right now you can do this, right? And if the opponent's like sidestepping, the perception will track them. So let me see if I can make the CPU do that. See how it's like realigning to them as they're turning?
Yep.
Yeah, that makes the mechanic extremely powerful. So instead of it being like that, I should go into perception, and then if I move, I can do it again, right? Rather than it being like perception.
Right.
I'm locked into the stance for a bit. I'll talk about breaking out of grabs and perception later, but another thing, I guess I should mention it now though. Like being able to break out of grabs during perception is also something that would be highly appreciated if it was removed, because this is supposed to be a counter stance, and generally speaking in fighting games, when you're in some type of counter, you can't break out of grabs during it. Yeah. In this game, you can break out of grabs during anything. So that in general, that was something that I was going to discuss later. But yeah, another thing, when you're blocking and you go into perception, this game has some weird system. I don't even have it really solved yet, but let me see if I can make the CPU combo, man. Essentially, when you're blocking and you go into perception, it sometimes does a perception and sometimes does a sonic sway. I forget what sonic sway is called in this game. Let me go read it. There's a specific name in this game so that people don't get confused. Is it? No, it's not this. High speed evasion? I think it's high speed evasion. It says the input's L1, but it's not actually L1. Oh wait, no, high speed evasion is a vanish, I think. I don't even know if this game has a name for it. It probably does. Someone in the comments will know. So Sonic Sway essentially comes out at like an R. So the proposed notion for Sonic Sway in this game is that it comes out when you perfectly time your perception against the enemy's attack, but that's not actually true. Like, I've tested it with 2 controllers. I've done 2 inputs of Square at pretty much the exact same timing. I go from block into perception. Sometimes I'll get perception, sometimes I'll get Sonic Sway. My theory is that Sonic Sway has some type of cooldown and that you can't always get Sonic Sway after being in block stun, but I don't know if that's actually true. I think the game should just let you go into Sonic Sway out of guard stun every time. So like, if you're hitting my guard and I press perception, it should go into Sonic Sway, just like Tenkaichi 3.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can make the CPU. I got super perception there because he did a heavy. Oh yeah, sometimes you get hit too. That's another thing. Sonic Sway there, right? Perception. Like, I didn't even have to do more than 1 instance of it. It just happens. But yeah. Let me pause this and then go back to my WordPad. But those were the 2 proposed changes that I had for perception. So loop charge key blasts. I call them loop charge key blasts, but they're like, I think Dawn in their document calls them fireball key blasts. So let me go to MUI Goku. He has a unique one. His are a little bit faster and stuff. So there's a loop in this game. You can do a charge key blast. It's the only true combo in the game. I mean, you can get out of it with a revenge counter, but okay. So this is the loop. And it works with any fireball key blast. MUI Goku has the best one because it's really fast and does a lot of damage. And they're in that recovery animation I was talking about. You see like the little flips they do?
Yep.
And that's why you can hit them. They can block only if you mess up. There's no iframes during that little recovery animation, so it just forces them into that loop. And they can't block after unless you mess up. It's just a true combo. So yeah. All right.
Now I see WordPad. Cool.
Yeah. All right, so for grabs, add lockout window to mashing guard in order to break. So essentially by mashing guard in this game, you can escape any grab. There's no timing at all. You can literally just mash the block button for the entire game and you'll never get grabbed, unless it's an untechable grab, like Z-Broly or Brakum, etc. So let me go into game again. I don't know why I have to end screen to go back and forth, but let me know what you see. Yeah.
I'm looking at the screen.
I don't know if the CPU is gonna grab. I don't know if there's a way to make it do that, to be honest. See, the developers knew that grabs were useless, so there's no practice option against them. You should just know how to beat them. Smash block. All right, essentially you just do this, and they can't grab you. Like ever. So yeah, and you can do it out of perception too. So I'm mashing guard right now and they can't grab me. All right, it's an OS. So yeah, pretty simple. Just add a lockout window to the mashing, kind of similar to how T3 or Tenkaichi 3 had the lockout window for super counter, which we'll get into in a second. It was called Z counter back then, but same thing. But yeah, essentially there should be some type of lockout window for pressing it, and that way you can't like break out of grabs instantly. Alternatively, you could just make it a separate button. Like you have to do the grab input to break the grab, like it was in T3, instead of pressing block, which is kind of a bizarre button. I don't know how exactly they'd fix it, but that's my proposed solution. It's just making some type of lockout window for the input, at least during hit stun or during block stun. Obviously, you should be able to mash guard like in neutral. Getting looped by the CPU. All right. Let me change. You see the notepad?
Yes.
So super counter. This is a point of contention right now between a lot of people. So figured I'd talk about it. Super counter, reduce leniency during hit stun, lockout window, kind of like the grab. So once again, in Zenkai G3, there was a lockout window for spamming super counter. It was called Z counter, like I said before back then. Essentially, right now you can just mash the inputs and you'll get out of combos during hit stun. And being able to do that just makes the defense in this game a little bit broken, I guess, because you're using a resource-free break or burst or however you want to call it from another fighting game, and it essentially allows you to win the interaction because let's say presumably they use some key to get to you and then you super counter out and then you force a vanish war and you have more key because you're using a super counter which doesn't cost anything, right? The issue with it, more so than the key lack of a resource cost, is that it's able to be mashed. That's like it makes it sort of for lack of better words kind of brain dead. So by making it an actual 1 frame window every time, or 2 frame window at most, so it would be like a perfect block in another fighting game, or the way it works in actual interactions like Vanish Wars or Super Counter Wars, where the other person super counters, you have to super counter them back. That should be the timing that's used for active frames when you're getting hit. You have to actually match the active frame of the move, and if you miss it, you're locked out for 12 frames or whatever, some arbitrary number. Alternatively, it can also cost 1 key bar. That way, even if you do get that frame or X amount of frame, because you lost neutral, you have to use a certain amount of key to get out of it, because there are characters that are going to hit really fast and it's pretty easy to time a super counter against them. So it should cost some meaningful amount.
Yeah.
I don't know whether 1 key bar is good. I do like the idea of it costing 1 key bar if you're in combo, but if you're in a super counter war, then it could be free, because that adds some casual hype, like being able to super counter, ad infinitum. But from a competitive side, if people do end up being really good at it, then it not costing anything would just make the game super counter forever, right? I don't know whether or not it's possible, because in this game you can vanish a super counter, which would allow you to vanish and then they super counter and then you super counter and then they vanish, and then it adds a lot of timing mix-ups. But I don't know. In T3, people were able to get 180 or 200 super counters in a row. So I think people eventually get to that point in this game as well. So it costing wouldn't be a bad idea, especially with the changes that I have for the Z counter, which is also known as a vanish. What do you think, Shonan?
Yeah, I'm with it so far. Honestly, if they're gonna play everything to you're set back on neutral and stuff, and everything costs, even the short dash, the whole super counter, not having the key cost makes sense, because then if almost everything's gonna cost, you might as well just go all the way and not take half measures on this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So for Z counters, which I call vanishes, it's pretty similar. I think that there's 3 changes that I would make with Z counter, or at least one of them, to make it a little bit more balanced and to get rid of the whole vanish war shenanigan. So Z counters granting skill points is sort of stupid to me, because it sort of benefits people, or it sort of incentivizes people to do extended vanish wars, especially if they're the ones that are going to win. And alternatively, it kind of disincentivizes people from engaging in vanish wars if the other person's going to win and get some type of reward out of it. So the rewards would be, in previous patches, like Yajirobe getting a Sensu Bean off of a 1 vanish war, Insta Sparks, stuff like that at the end of a vanish war. And this all happens because they grant skill points. Every time you vanish, you're gaining meter on your skill points. So the skill point bar is the number below your character icon on the top left or top right, if you're player 1 or 2. I don't know whether or not this would be super impactful, but it definitely would make some type of difference, because purposely vanishing nonstop in order to gain skill points, in order to create your set play and do this flow chart where you're just constantly going into sparking, you just repeat and then force them into another vanish war. It's kind of silly. Yeah. At least from a fighting game perspective, right? It's just another mini game essentially. Alternatively, you can make it so that a Z counter no longer vanishes super counter, so that if someone does use their combo breaker, you can't counter their combo breaker. So in games like Guilty Gear Strive, for example, you can bait a burst. I don't really see how you'd implement that into this game, to bait a super counter that costs meter. You actually kind of can in this game by doing stuff like combo into perception, and then if they do the up square input, then they're gonna hit your perception. But it's not really as reliable as like backstepping, or like using some type of movement to dodge it. So I think not being able to vanish a super counter makes it so that the person super countering gets some reward. And then if they're also implementing, the key cost and the reduced leniency, then, they get their burst, but they're using a key bar and you're not engaging a vanish war afterwards. So it makes it sort of like, that's it. That's the end of the interaction. There's no more, we're not watching 30 seconds of a vanish war afterwards. And then lastly, I had vanishes behind opponent with no attack for a Z counter. So once again, if they implemented all these different changes, you could just make it so that a vanish, so like for example, if you vanish a vanishing assault, so the X square input on a PS5 controller, on both control schemes, standard and classic, you would just vanish right behind them. So you get rewarded for timing your vanish on the vanishing assault, and there's no vanish war afterwards. The only issue would be if they made this change, and that you can do it on a super counter. In that case, vanishing would be a little bit broken, because you'd be able to just vanish a super counter and then just punch them in their back. But if they did make it, it's kind of a contingent. I would make it like a contingent. Am I an idiot? I don't know how to like, okay, just imagine that bullet point was to the right more. It's contingent on the previous adjustment in order to make this a viable adjustment, because if you can no longer vanish a super counter, then vanishing behind opponent with no attack would make it so that it's balanced. But if you can vanish behind the opponent with no attack and it does vanish a super counter, it would be broken, right? So that sounds a little bit convoluted, but I don't know if you're following along so far.
I got most of it. I think the re-explain the last part again. I think I'm pretty caught up aside from that.
So, all right. So if you super counter me while I'm hitting you, right?
Yeah.
There's two ways to make it work. Either I vanish behind you and there's no attack, which would be broken, because if I do that and I vanish behind you with no like, the vanishing assault animation that triggers the vanish wars. If there's none of that, then you're using your burst, aka the super counter, but then I punish you anyway because I vanished it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's just you're gonna get infinited basically, or TOD'd, because I'll just vanish every super counter and then that's it. There's no vanish war afterwards. There's no hope for you to win. But if you can't vanish the super counter, then it's fine if the Z counter vanishes with no attack, because then if you super counter me while I'm hitting you, I'll just get hit, and that's it. That's the end of the interaction.
Yep.
However, if you do like a vanishing assault, aka the X square input, the one that vanishes behind them and does a hit, then I'll vanish behind you and I get rewarded for it, because that actually takes like timing to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I got it now.
All right. Cool. All right. Next, I have some sparking mode things. I say to increase cooldown during key blast. So like for characters like full power Jiren and MUI Goku, all the higher tier DP characters, they can infinitely key blast during sparking. There's no intermission, or like there's essentially no cooldown between their key blast animations. Whereas with Yamcha, for example, he'll stop throwing key blasts after a set amount of time. Like he'll throw 5 just like he does in normal, and then he has to stop for a bit and then he can do it again. So I can showcase this as well. I have to stop sharing and then share again.
I see it now.
All right. Need the CPU to stop beating me up, bro. Chill. Okay. So.
It's my turn.
See how you can just throw Key Blast infinitely?
Yep.
Yeah, there should be some type of intermission between that, because right now he's throwing 20 Key Blasts before he even gets any type of cooldown, right? Whereas with like a character like, I think even Jiro has some type of, you see how he has a cooldown?
Yep.
That should be a universal thing. Like I think the higher tier characters should be throwing more Key Blasts, more than 3, so maybe like, I don't know, 6, some arbitrary number just throwing out there. But like, it shouldn't be an infinite loop. This is what allows for people to get caught by, Key Blast, force them into block stun, force them into deflect, and then they just get ulted. If you make it so that they're only throwing 3, then there's a lot more counterplay, because you still get rewarded for it being for being in sparking, but you're not rewarded as heavily. So
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah. All right. Let me go back to my WordPad. So next I had Giants. I think the Z-Burst Dash should no longer be an attack. There is a lot of bugs with Giants in this game. If you Z-Burst Dash them at the same frame that their Z-Burst Dash is going to hit you, then you lock them into the Z-Burst Dash animation. If you go to the skybox, then their Z-Burst Dash will start glitching out, and they have to descend in order to make it not glitch out. There's glitches with their grabs where they can infinitely grab loop you, and the only thing you can really do is vanish or super counter it. There's a ton of bugs with Giants, and I feel like that honestly should be its own separate video. But
okay, fair.
Like, yeah, it's similar to like the whole control scheme bugs that are going on right now. There's a lot of new bugs with classic controls, for example, but you know that's kind of irrelevant to the primary point, which is that in Tenkaichi 3, once I keep bringing up Tenkaichi 3, I'm not saying that the game was better in any way, but there were some things in Tenkaichi 3 that would definitely be, you know, better in this game. And I use it as a reference point because it's already been done by the developers, so there's no reason not to backtrack on things that were already good. There's no reason not to, you know, use those things that were already working in the first place. But if I pick a Giant, the Z-Burst Dash is an attack, which allows for these infinite block string or unblockable armored infinites, right? So there is counterplay to this. It's just it's stupid. Like the counterplay is that you have to vanish, super counter, or super perception it, but it's hard counterplay. I actually think Giants are a cheese and their gimmicks. Like they're actually not good characters, but this is another thing that both competitive and casual players are not enjoying playing against. Like no one is enjoying fighting this. If you enjoy playing it, props to you, I guess. But I personally don't know anyone that enjoys fighting this. Like maybe it's some like Elden Ring. Like I don't know. If you're an Elden Ring player, maybe you enjoy playing against this. It's like kind of a fun gimmick or mini game to play, but it's corny in my opinion. I might be biased in this, but I don't really think this is an enjoyable mechanic. So making the Z-Burst Dash work like a normal characters does and making them just go to them would be highly beneficial. And like with Dr. Wheelo having 4 health bars that are entirely full, he's on the same tier as like MUI Goku and full power Jiren as a 4 DP character. He starts with like 2 or 3 Blastox as well, infinitely regenerating ki. Like every Giant has this Z-Burst Dash, but obviously Wheelos is the most problematic, especially in rank because he's such a low DP cost and you know he's an android, etc. Full power mode. But yeah, pretty simple change that I would make to Giants. Besides all the bug fixes as well, there's a lot of bugs that they have too. Okay. So yeah, Giants Z-Burst Dash. It's this. I already talked about it. It's stupid. It should just be a regular Z-Burst Dash like other characters that just goes to the opponent quickly. Yeah. just to show what it is. I mean, most people watching probably already have fought this in ranked and know what it is. But yeah. Yeah, Dr. Zero, best character in the game. I'm gonna turn Ki to normal. Everything's on normal. Actually, I can put it on minimum. Fuck it. Or actually, no, I can't. I need like at least 1 sliver. Actually, will it regen? No, it's not gonna regen because it's not a normal, but I can put it on normal and then it's gonna regen from minimum. So, okay. So this doesn't cost any ki on androids, and Z-axis movement in this game is really overpowered because short dash, this costs ki, so it's really hard to catch people moving on the Z-axis like this. It works with any cardinal direction. You can do it in every. You can do it on the entire Cartesian plane. Like, it does not matter, and this doesn't cost anything for them. Burst dashes do, short dashes do. But because of how the tracking in this game works with moves and, you know, Dragon Dashes in general, you can OS with this the entire game and just force the timeout. They're currently banned in most tournaments because of this. The only thing they can do, if you're just doing this, they can do a beam attack. I actually talked to someone on Twitter about this. But the thing is, you can just do this if they do a beam attack on reaction. It's not hard. Like, you just see them do it, and then you just do this.
Yeah.
And then you just dodge it. So you literally just do this forever. GG. Like, there's no counterplay. Like, game start, I just start doing this. There's nothing you can do, especially if you're implementing short dashes with it.
17 can do the suit, I assume?
No, only Dr. Zero and Android 19.
Okay.
So yeah. They also have False Courage, which was, I think, the next thing I wanted to talk about anyway. Yeah. So False Courage is really OP too, especially on Giants, because their key consumption is really low, so they can do this for an extremely long amount of time. They're regenerating key while they're doing it. I think the developers didn't realize how much this would be abused. Like, this is canon in a way, because they don't use key when they dragon dash in canon. But it's again one of those things that's dumb for both people that want to play the game competitively and people that are looking at it on a casual level. I can just do this. Say I have false courage up. Do this. Force a grab. Of course, you can always get out of grabs, but just the threat of it is stupid. Like, you also have the false courage 2 armor stacks, which is kind of what I wanted to talk about. I think the false courage stack should break after like 2 or 3 light hits. That way, it's not like that broken. It only costs 1 blast stock too. Like,
insane.
It's absurd. You have to use a heavy hit to break it. It forces interactions that don't have much counterplay, like this into grab is really gimmicky. People that don't know how to break grabs are gonna get hit by it, especially casuals. Like, it's extremely corny. And you couple that with this, and androids are insane. Specifically 19 and Juro. The other androids are pretty balanced actually. So lock on in this game is really bad compared to the older games. It's actually really hard to find people when they break your tracking. So like with instant transmission or solar flare, you can be looking directly at them and you still have to wait like 2 or 3 seconds to find them. I don't really know how they would fix this. I mean, faster tracking is my proposed solution. Like, from a coding perspective, I'm not really sure exactly how they would do it, but it's definitely something that I would propose to be fixed. It's kind of silly how you're just looking directly at someone, but you don't have instant lock-on vision of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty simple enough. There's not really much to say about that. It's kind of just there. Like, it should just be obvious, right?
It's insane. I seen that in one of the tournaments you played. Like, use basically in front of the guy's face, and it wasn't locking on. You was like punching the air.
Yep, it's insane. DP, as a value change I would make, I think a lot of the lower DP characters are really strong compared to their high DP variations. So in DP ranked, it's really easy to use characters like Pan, Master Roshi, and abuse like their stronger skills, like Aftermath Strike or Full Power, etc. And you essentially get more value out of using them than like certain 7 or 8 costs because they don't have any of the gimmicks. So like lowering their overall stats is something that I would make too. I feel like right now there's not that big of a disparity between them. I think in 3v3s, there is more variety. You get like 5v5s, you get 8-4-3 variations, you get different combination permutations of numbers for DP. So in 3v3s it's good, but once again for ranked it's kind of easy to abuse like lower DP characters to make a 5-man team, and then their stats aren't weak enough to get soloed by like a 2-man team, unless the other player is just better. So that's like a kind of a minor change. It's not like hyper necessary, which is why it's not lower on the list.
Okay.
For switching, it's kind of twofold. I would reduce HP gain during switch. So right now you gain like HP per second. I don't know what percent. It's probably like 1% per second or something. Up to a certain amount. I don't remember if it's like 1 bar or 2 bars. But you do gain HP when you're on the bench. I would reduce that to a certain amount and cap it at a lower amount as well. Because playing around your bench is really OP right now. Once again, especially in ranked, where it's a heavily 5v5 centric meta, especially around the like more casual player base. They're gonna have to be playing around like Yajirobe A19, Dr. Wheelo A20, etc. These types of teams. And Dr. Wheelo, like, it gets absurd. And coupled along with this, I would say reduce switch gauge regeneration rate per character on team. So if you have a 5-man team, it takes longer for the switch gauge to regenerate. Because right now, lower DP costs, which I talked about earlier, they're being highly used in ranked because of the fact that they have these overpowered skills, but they also switch faster, which allows them to regain HP faster. And because they switch so fast, because they're lower DP, you're just constantly putting people on a loop where they have to deal with these lower DP characters that are using really OP skills to switch to regen HP. And it's just a positive feedback loop that they're just gaining from every time. So they're not really playing the game. They're kind of just playing a flow chart. And they just loop themselves and just play around the bench, which makes it kind of silly in my opinion. That's like a proposed change that I would make to switching, but I don't know how you feel about that.
I guess because I don't play ranked, like I probably watch more tournaments and more people streaming ranked than I've played ranked. So
Yeah.
I actually didn't notice the healing amounts when you're switching between characters. Like I knew there was some. I knew characters were recovering somewhat, but I guess I never paid too much attention to how much they were recovering until like you said it just now.
I would say lastly is some kind of quality of life changes, QL like changes basically that I would make. The HUD, so the interface that you see in the game, I think there should be some quality of life changes in terms of like showing characters HP on team. So like kind of like Fighter Z or Fighters, however it's pronounced, where you can see the other character's HP on the opponent's team. It doesn't have to be like a big icon or anything, just kind of there. So you don't have to have a mental tracker of how much HP the other character has. That way, if you do happen to get timed out or something similar, you can know who exactly is going to win, how aggressive you have to play, etc.
Oh, like
Good.
So like so let's say you lost, right? And then it shows like the win screen of the opponent who won. There should be an icon like of
Oh yeah, that's after the game, but I'm saying even in the game.
Oh, I see. Oh, so then they would need to create like an additional HUD showing like what characters are. Yeah, I guess you could do that like on the very far left and very far right. It shows.
Yeah, you could even put it like under the key bars. You could just put like a small circular icon of their HP.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And then alongside this, like indicate skill buffs and timers. So like if you have afterimage strike up or if you have wild sense, etc. That way you don't have to keep track of it. You could just put like some random icon and then put like, a circle above, around it that's like counting down, and you can kind of see like how long it's going to last. Or alternatively, just put like, an actual countdown, 15, 14, 13 for afterimage strike, etc. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. I don't know.
I mean, you went over all the ones that I was thinking about anyway, so and more. I guess it just, I mean, like, I know they said that they're gonna pretty much like not mess with the game too much and like not for competitive play, but I think the only time their hand is gonna be forced is if it's a huge inconvenience for the casual player, and if it is, then I feel like
exactly.
that's when they intervene.
Yep. And I think a lot of these are affecting casuals. Like, no one wants to play Vanish Wars. Everyone feels like super counter is kind of stupid. Not being able to see your opponent when you're looking directly at them is kind of stupid. I think more specific stuff like, I don't know, perception. Like, for example, perception, that becoming Sonic Sway during guard stun, like most casuals probably don't care about that or even know that it's kind of like inconsistent. So that's something that I would say is probably more focused for the competitive side. But a lot of these other changes are affecting casuals as well, especially if they're playing online at all, like even player matches. So, like I said at the start, I would propose that these are changes that would benefit everybody. Like, there's no downside. It's a win-win. But once again, if they don't want to change anything about the game, then, it is what it is. But this is my take on it. And I figured people might be interested in it or giving their own perspective on what I propose.
Yeah. I think it's now, once they touch Yajirobe, I was like, all right, it's not all doomed.
It's not fully doomed.
Yeah. Like I said before, like if it's bad enough that it ruins the experience of the casual player, they're gonna intervene.
Exactly. So one thing I wanted to mention is that I've seen a lot of people talk about the Vanishing War. Like, a proposed fix to the Vanish War that I've seen a lot of people present is that it should be like kind of like the Zenkaiichi 4 mod that, it speeds up over time and then it turns into a mini game. The reason I'm not really much of a fan of that is that that's also solvable. Like, the amount of it's going to be much harder to vanish, right? But people are still going to get good at that too. Like, if it's increasing, for example, half a beat, 1/4 of a beat, 1/8 of a beat, 1/16 of a beat in a consistent rate, then people with good rhythm are going to be able to, get into that Vanish War and do it to like an exceedingly long amount of time. If you've ever seen like Lethal League, for example, there's people that can play these highly, increasing speed rhythms over an extended period of time. It might take longer for sure, but I just don't like the proposition of turning it into a mini game again. Like, you're fixing an issue, but not totally removing it, I suppose.
Yeah, because if it's just a timing, because I was thinking about this, is like, just change the timing to T3. But then I remember, like, the people who played T3, like, they got the timing already. So it would still, a player that's like of almost equal skill level, it's going to be like nothing changed at all. I think it's just an
adapting issue.
Yeah.
So I think that, and I also don't like the proposition of turning it into a mini game after a while. This is bias. I'm just going to preface by saying it. I just don't like mini games. Like, I feel like they're stupid. Obviously, casuals. Also, when I say casuals, I don't mean it in any demeaning way. I just mean like people that are playing for fun. And I'm playing for fun too, obviously. But I personally just don't like having to play a mini game in order to win an interaction. So again, as I said before, I am biased in saying this, but it turning into a mini game after X amount of interactions, I feel like it's kind of like Not really a solution once again, but
I wonder if
yeah.
like for Vanishing Wars, like after like between like 5 or 10 interactions, that it just separates the both of you and just puts you back on neutral. And
Yes, that could work too. That would make it so that the key management isn't as much of a relevancy either. Like it kind of just makes it so that the interaction just forces a neutral exchange. You go back to 0 or you go back to neutral. It's fine. Like
or make
that's fine as well.
Or make it that like even if the timing for the Vanishing Wars stays the same, like make it so that like you could vanish out of it to neutral, and without it being punishing, and just because you don't want to play the Vanishing War anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. That's also a good solution. I think there's a lot of possible, pathways or propositions that you can make. I personally just don't like the mini game solution. I think the ones that I proposed are pretty good too. Like not granting skill points is pretty basic. Just it promotes this like degenerate gameplay in order to gain some type of resource benefit. Vanishing behind an opponent with no attack is fine too, as long as it no longer vanishes super counter. Conditional changes though. So
yeah,
again, it just depends on how much effort they're willing to put into fixing it. But there's definitely a lot of possible pathways that you can take in order to ameliorate the situation. So
yeah,
but yeah.
Good list. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I know you guys wanted to see Dom back, so he's back with a list of stuff. And we'll see you guys for the next video. Take care, guys.